Welcome, welcome, fans, to the Bounce Off podcast with me, P, and my girl V. What's up, V?
What's up, girl? What's up?
Okay, V. Something happened this weekend that was cool, and it was the F1 race.
Oh, yeah.
Did
Oh
you
my God.
watch it?
Okay, no, I just saw highlights. I just saw highlights.
Do you follow Formula One?
I do not. However, when there's a lot of media attention about something or something's being hyped up, I do end up either tuning in or watching a highlight about it.
Okay, so I also don't. I used to be a Top Gear stan from the
Oh,
BBC days, and then into when they moved to Prime, and then now they just ended, and I feel like there's a hole in my heart, and I have to go back
whoa.
and
Why does this
rewatch
surprise
things.
me about you?
I
Top
don't
Gear.
know. I really, well, I like them and their humor, but I love sexy cars, and I love cars that go fast around a track or
Oh
something.
my
And I
God, I've
love
learned so much about you in the last 30 seconds. Holy
Well,
shit.
okay, so I love racing video games. And the thing about the Formula One Las Vegas Grand Prix is that when it started last year, everyone had feelings about it, right? Because Vegas is like, what the fuck? They're fucking up our city. The local residents are like, this is a nightmare. It was like a logistical feat slash headache. And even just like travelers and people who were there were just disrupted. And so I think there was controversy around it, but it has all been part of the F1 trying to grow, the F1 organization trying to grow the sport, especially in the US. So I think it was a really smart decision. But it was when I saw the video of the race from last year that I was like, holy fuck. This is the coolest looking thing I have ever seen because
Whoa.
it's like this track is so brightly lit within the skyscape
It's
of
so
Las
Vegas.
Vegas.
It's so Vegas.
It's really incredible that it's Vegas and it's like in the middle of it all on the strip, but you can clearly see the track. And then these just cars are going vroom, like past the Paris hotel. It's just so cool. And we talked about this when we were in that Vegas lift. Was like my family's road trips to Vegas, and like how Vegas was part of my childhood.
Yeah, shout outs to Circus Circus.
Yeah, exactly. The one place that was child safe in the early 90s. Yeah, so I that race itself and how it visually looked was what made me interested in watching it this year. But this year I was like, I want to know more about the sport before I watch this race so that, again, like we keep saying, I feel connected to the result and what's happening throughout the thing. So I'll just tell you some stuff that's interesting.
I can't wait. Yes.
Okay. First of all, Formula One is the name of like the rule book. That's what Formula One is, and it's basically a corporation. It's like a league, kind of, but there's only 10 teams on the league, and there's only two drivers per team. So it's kind of like you
Not a
got
lot of competitors. Oh my God.
no.
Yeah.
And like I get you can't have that many cars on the track, but it's like so that means the entire sport is 20 athletes plus like engineering teams and stuff, but those guys are rarely in the spotlight.
This is a real question. Do they refer to them as athletes?
No, they refer to them as drivers, but they do a lot of training, athletic training.
Right. Like, I'm wondering if these drivers consider themselves athletes.
Athletes, that's a good question. So, what I was noticing when I didn't watch all the Drives to Survives because there's like 6 seasons of them. So I just watched a couple of episodes and I was like, these guys look like they're 17 and they are in fact really young because you can be an F1 driver starting at the age of 18. So then my next question was like, how do you like with a golfer who's 18, they've been doing it since they were 3, right? So I'm like, how does one decide I'm going to become a professional race car driver? And then, like, what does that training process, as they say in Canada, look like? And Benita,
Right. When technically you've only been driving for maybe
Well, let me just tell you, the training starts at like 3 or 4 indeed, and it starts with karting. They have like go-karting leagues for like pee-wee drivers. So these kids have won like these like young 20 something F1 drivers have like been successful in karting at the age of like 13.
These are the best resumes ever.
Isn't that so funny? I was like, wait, if I had known, like, if in the US this was a thing and I could just like grow up go-karting and like have that be a potential career, hello, who wouldn't want to do that?
Fuck, I grew up playing Mario Kart, as many people did, and
Yeah.
64 the best. Not
Yes.
once in my entire time playing that game was I like, fuck, do you think I could do this in real life?
Wait, you never used to go go-karting
I mean,
for
we
like a
like race
birthday
go kart.
party or
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But again, P, you're just like, it's a birthday party,
Yeah.
not, I think I want to do this
Yeah,
competitively.
yeah. Yeah, but that again could be like our North American culture.
Right, right.
I do feel like I would be good at it because I was good at go-karting and
Oh,
Mario
dude.
karting.
Yeah, me too. Hit me up with that fucking red shell and I'll get your ass, dude.
When
Okay,
you
when you
have
say
good
North
aim, I was gonna say when you have good aim with a green shell, like there's no better
There
feeling.
is no, it's so true. Like the odds were stacked against me, motherfucker, and I still
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, when you say North American culture, are you saying that a lot of these younger kids are stemming from one particular part of the world?
Yeah, a big part of the sport comes from the UK. So out of the 10 teams, I think 7 of them are UK based teams. Two
Whoa.
of them are Italian and one is like German or something. So most of them are, yeah, it's the UK. And like when I was watching Top Gear, there was this whole other language that I wasn't usually picking up on like the celebrity drivers and like the history of F1 racing that they would talk about a lot. And I'm like, yeah, I have no idea what this is like a whole other world that's been happening for decades that I just do not know anything about.
When you talk about sports that I think are really hard for a female to become a fan of, I automatically think about race cars. Like,
Yeah.
truly.
So I'm glad you brought that up because Danica Patrick is one of the voices on this docu-series, which is so amazing to see. Like I remember her just coming up and being a fucking badass and then becoming the GoDaddy spokesperson. And then, she's like really, she has an amazing record and now she is commentating on these F1 races. Like she was one of the on the ground like people at the Las Vegas Grand Prix. So it was so cool to see her and I was reminded of like, oh fuck yeah. Oh yeah, Danica Patrick, like this female racer. She was like the only
I would say
one.
the one, there's the only one I can still only name. I
Yeah.
don't know if she actually like cultivated a new crop of
Right,
drivers.
like there wasn't a huge like wave of female drivers after her. So there's this guy Toto Wolff. He's like one of the personalities in F1. He's one of the team like owners or CEOs or something. His wife, actually, Susie Wolf, is championing this thing called the F1 Academy, which is for women drivers.
Dope.
But even
Dope.
she, like, the question was, will there ever be a female Formula One driver? And she's like, she even said like we have to manage our expectations, which is
Mm.
kind of like that means first of all that's like a very like older white woman thing to say because it's like oh you've been in that but then
And then she ended it with live, laugh, love.
yeah 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 well she was German so she didn't end it with any such dribble or Austrian or something but I think her saying that is more a product of like how gatekeepy this must be because it's like so much money to like have a team, to build a vehicle, to even compete. If there's only 10 teams in there, there are a lot of teams out there who are vying for spots in and they're just like what never going to get in because everyone's like we're happy with 10, we could have up to 12, but there would have to be a really big draw that other team brings in order for them to open it up. So it's just like, yes, the opportunities are limited, but the fact that she's like, we have to manage our expectations about women, I'm like, why would a good female driver who trains at the age of 3 be any less likely than a male kid?
Right. Well, okay, so it makes me think about someone like Danica Patrick to really want to trace her story on how in the hell she started to play this sport. Because,
Yeah.
okay, so I have a 3-year-old right now, and I'll tell you, she doesn't give a shit about race cars, she doesn't give a shit about Hot Wheels, but like a lot of her dude friends, that's all they fucking want.
Yeah, but she's like holding a hockey stick at the playground.
It's true. She wants to, yeah, she doesn't want to just like sit down and roll something. She's like, let's fucking play some
She
hockey.
wants
And
to hit some shit.
dude, she tries to sucker all the boys to be a goalie. And I'm like, you just want to whack shit at them, girl. It's so good. But that being said, okay, think about even some of the folks that we've interviewed. All right, buy a glove and a baseball or a soccer ball or some skates. I truly don't even know what's the first move. If I think to myself, I think I might want to try this sport out.
Yeah. I don't know if Danica Patrick, because like NASCAR is obviously very different from F1.
Right, true.
So I don't know if this is like maybe an NFL thing where it's like a lot of families in like those NASCAR big names were like kind of lineages also like in football. So I don't know if she had someone in her family who was already kind of in. I feel
Good
like that
point.
would make the most sense
That's
because
a
yeah,
good point.
I don't really get it either like how but again, like I don't necessarily live in a state where NASCAR culture is like has a huge presence. Like I do know that they have races out in like Imperial Valley and stuff, but or the Inland Empire, but yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. But
Well,
I don't think it's karting. I don't know. Maybe I don't know if Danica Patrick started as a carter.
it's a sport. Okay, I'm going to be entering the world of stereotypes. So just a warning over here, which is when I think about who would be into something like F1, just race car driving in general, I honestly think about rural areas, not metropolitan areas.
Right,
I
right.
think about who's more likely to be driving at younger ages. And I think about rural areas
Yeah.
where like kids are,
Like
fuck, they're like, we have like one stoplight in our town and no one's pulling us over. Fuck, I'm so sorry. I'm like, this is stereotype. But even in like rural Alberta, like shit, like where I grew up, that was what people knew. And you knew that kids were driving at 10 years old.
That's interesting. Yeah, or like I know a lot of like kids who grow up on farms who like started driving a tractor. A lot of people tell me like, "Oh, that's how I learned how to drive stick." Is like on a farm equipment.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there is a movement now I happen to know around race car driving where, the call is that it's quite monopolized right now. So if
Hmm.
we want to diversify the sport, we've got to get some competing leagues. Michael Jordan's
Yes.
creating like a lot of noise right now about trying to invest in motorsports and sort of poking at some of the rules that might be existing here.
That would
I'm
be rad. There's
Yes.
definitely room for like a live, for lack of a better example, like other leagues. Because if there's only 10 teams in this one league, then we need to have more leagues.
Yes. Yes. Like you honestly won't find me watching like tuning in live for any kind of motorsports
I mean, it
event.
was cool. Oh, wait, let me just tell you though, there's a team called Alpine. It's not Alpine because it's whatever, European. But like there's a lot of celebrity investors in this. It's like Ryan Reynolds and Rory McIlroy was like there giving interviews.
Oh
And so
shit.
there are other athletes and celebs getting behind this. There was a sports psychologist in one of the documentaries I watched because someone was asked, like, more and more people are starting to seek sports psychology in this sport as well. And the person who was talking about it was like, yeah, normally it's seen as a weakness or something. And I was like, uh, we're still doing that. But then, like,
Why?
it's so not seen as a weakness in like golf, for instance, where everyone has one.
Yeah, I would actually perceive, at least what I learned from Matt Park, is if you don't have someone you're working with, you're seen as not really maximizing
Yeah,
your
yeah.
potential.
Which, like, for driving at that level where the focus and kind of the self relationship is so important, I could see this being a big thing.
Especially if
Oh,
you're telling me that they start so young.
Yeah, exactly. And like the sense of self development, because that was Matt Park's whole thing, like being grounded in a sense of self. And if you don't have that develop beyond this role that you play here, like that could be a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, I don't think I got a sense of self until like 36.
Third,
So
that's what I tell everyone. It didn't start getting solid until 35.
I also think that if you're 21, let's say, you have been and you are so heavily influenced by the people around you
Yeah,
that of course the sense of self piece is so hard to navigate. But
yeah.
think about how that would infiltrate your thinking while you're competing, while you're, oh
Totally.
my gosh.
Perfectionist types. One interesting stat for you is that the audience has grown since that docuseries Drive to Survive, and now F1 has a 40% female audience.
What?
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
big, dude.
I know. And like you ask that question to everyone, like, how can we grow the female fan base? And like F1 has figured it out. I don't know if like women find cars to be sexy like me. The drivers are all very pretty as well. I don't know if it's that. I don't know if it's like the celebrities in the stand. It is a really exciting thing to watch. I like it.
Whoa, you actually
And
just blew my mind. Like, I do need to look
I
this
know.
up now. Like, how did they do this?
I know. Well, they did it because a new CEO came in and he tried to grow the brand, and they did invite the cameras in and put it on Netflix. And like I know women who are like female writers who are interested to the point that they want to write like an F1 pilot. And there's a lot of passion about this in the female demographic. So it's fascinating. I feel like, well, I'm now one of them because I learned about it and now I care. I think that you know who Lewis Hamilton is?
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like he has like 39 million followers on
Oh my
Instagram.
God.
So he is like a big deal all around the world. He's been doing this for like 10 years. So, and I don't know if he's the only black one. There's a Japanese guy now, so now we've got Japan.
And
So,
that's all it takes,
yeah.
right? That's what golf taught us. It just takes that
Yeah.
one superstar.
Yeah, or Shohei Ohtani taught us that too.
That's
Yep.
it to drive everyone there. Even thinking about maybe like who they're grabbing as sponsors,
Yep.
where their marketing pulls in a different. Holy shit! I got to do a deep dive on this. You know,
Isn't that
Pete,
crazy?
I'm glad that you're bringing up a sport that I had no idea you were super into. Because I think I'm going to bring one up that maybe you didn't know I was really into that's been in the news a lot lately, which is track and field.
Has it been in the news a lot lately?
Oh my God. Well, fuck. Clearly you don't know about the big shit that's about to happen in track and field.
I don't know.
Okay, that's okay. I didn't know shit about F1 either. Actually, I didn't tell you the thing I knew about F1 was people were like Brad Pitt collapsed on the
Yeah.
track,
Oh, yeah, because they're shooting that
but he
movie.
was filming a movie. Oh my God,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
stupid. Anyway,
Also, Boys to Men sang the national anthem.
okay, well that'll pull me in. Holy
Yeah.
shit. Michael Johnson, does that name sound familiar to you?
Michael Johnson does sound familiar. Yeah, the runner from the 90s.
You
Yes,
got
yeah.
it. Yeah,
Mhm.
like huge track and field star back in the day, multiple Olympic medals. Was beat by Canadian Donovan Bailey, but we won't pull that one up again. So the idea here is they raced for like who's the fastest man on the planet, and there was like a
Okay, I
special
kind of
TV
remember.
event.
I thought they did it with Usain Bolt and someone.
Oh, maybe, but this was like a 90s
Oh, that's amazing.
like
Okay.
event that was just because these two were just like shit talking who's faster. One was the gold medalist in the 100 meter, one's gold medalist 200 meter, who's technically faster. And then Michael Johnson like pulled up with a leg injury. He was losing and
Uh,
he was losing and
he
just wanted
pulled
to.
a Noah Lyles a little bit,
Yes.
who, by the way, was also at the Las Vegas Grand Prix.
I feel like that doesn't surprise me for some
Yeah,
reason.
yeah,
That
yeah,
just seems so him.
totally.
So here's the thing about track and field, and I will say this is a series of sports, I guess. There are like a bunch of athletics involved in track and field, where I wouldn't say there's been equal attention to the female competitors and male competitors, but I know female track and field athletes have really been in the spotlight for quite a long time. What if you say names like Jackie Joyner Kersee,
Yeah.
Marion Jones, like people know that shit, Gail Devers.
Hmm.
So there's actually a lot to learn from track and field. Here's the downside. If you're a track and field fan like myself, you just think, ah, fuck, I gotta wait for, I don't know, every 4 years for world championships, every 4 years for
Right.
Olympics.
Right.
So Michael Johnson comes in and says, we need a league. We need a new track and field league where you can watch these athletes compete more consistently. And hey, it also gives them a chance to make more money.
Yeah. Right.
That's the hardest part, I would say, about track and field is you have very few monetizing opportunities.
Yeah, and visibility, like this came up with Patrick Chan, right? Like if Patrick Chan had had like a regular league to skate in and it wasn't all for this like 4 year push, like I think things would have looked really different.
I think you're right. I think you're right. I think things will look even different in the amount of money that's being poured into the sport.
Right, right.
So, anyway, hopefully all that grows accessibility. So this league is called Grand Slam Track,
Cool.
and it starts in April, so in a few months. It runs for 3 months. Gabby Thomas, who is an Olympic medalist for the US, she just recently signed on to this new league. And the idea behind it is let's get higher prizes, like purses for these athletes. And let's also build a fan base for track and field. Because when you have exciting athletes, like we just talked about, sure, they drum up some of the viewership. And I would say, arguably, there's a lot of exciting track and field athletes these days. And what an opportunity to learn about the sport so that when you do see them every 4 years, you really are invested in this athlete or this story because you've been following them for so
Yeah.
long.
I'll watch Sha'Carri Richardson do anything anytime.
Any fucking day. She is so dope,
And I
honestly.
really hope we see more of this French dude. Like I don't want him to just fade. We need to give him more shots out there.
What do you love about the French dude, P?
I love his gusto.
That is one word to use for this gentleman. I'm pulling this up because there are two things. One is that I do wonder who'll make up the viewership
Yeah.
because we do have superstar female track and field athletes. Does that equate to larger female viewership? Honestly,
Hmm.
it does for me, for real. Like I fucking can't wait to see this. And then two is this has been a theme. We're seeing all these new leagues pop up, trying to get athletes more money, trying to get the sport itself more into the limelight. Are these leagues going to pay off? It's still such an experiment. We have no fucking idea if it's actually making more money or building more of a fan base, but
Yeah.
I'm here for this shit.
Well, they need to do a companion docuseries then, because like I think that is what's doing it for everybody right now in these like making sports more visible.
Yes. So there is Sprint on Netflix. I don't know if you've seen it.
Oh no.
It's just this year. It just came out this year, and it
Oh,
does
great.
it does highlight sprinter stories. Your girl Richardson is in there, and it is, I would say, another reason why I was even more invested in the Olympics this year because of their
Oh, cool.
stories.
See? Wow, I think people are picking up on this.
What's like the documentary that we need now? What sport is missing?
We haven't, I mean, Simone Biles has her own, but I would like to see, because I remember with like the Magnificent Seven in the 90s, there was a lot of coverage about them and a lot of little featurettes. And I think we need more just gymnastics in general. Again, with figure skating, like the Michelle Kwan era, again, there was a lot of stuff out there and then it sort of stopped. So any of those sports that like we forget about every 4 years and then remember again, you know?
Yes, like steeplechase. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. I fucking still don't understand that goddamn sport, but one
So
day I
that means we
will.
definitely need a docuseries about it. Make thee a steeplechase convert.
Holy shit, it's gonna be some really good storytelling. Fuck. Oh my God. Okay. Can I just share one last thing that got me emotional this week?
Yeah.
I will name that for some fucking reason, when these prolific athletes are retiring, it's really bringing up something in me. The one athlete they retired his jersey was the San Jose Sharks. They just retired Joe Thornton's jersey. Okay, Joe Thornton was an incredible player for the Sharks. And I obviously have a soft spot because when I lived in the Bay Area, I got to go to like an insane number of Sharks games, Sharks playoff games, because they were like 10% the price of what an Edmonton Oilers game would
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
And I still
I
remember
mean, also for reasons, though.
yes, yes. It also coincides, I would say, with how I converted my husband into being a true hockey fan.
Oh,
Was by bringing him to the live
yeah.
experience. And the best way, truly, if you're listening to this and you're like, yo, fuck hockey, I get it. Sometimes it can be hard to watch on TV. Go to a live game and there's
Yeah.
nothing that beats it.
Yeah. 100%. That's what got me too. Yep. Because I went to a Ranger game and I was like, all of them are so pretty. It was like in like the 2011, 2012 team. And I was like, they all look like the same pretty guy who kind of all look like Dan. And I was like, I'm sold. I want to know who all these guys are.
Oh, and then you're like, Dan still has teeth. I'm gonna marry this one. Got it. Got it. Until they like smile and you're like, oh shit, yep, you're a hockey player. Goddamn. But it really, the live experience, not just the pace of the game, which I think I don't know, there's like this feeling when you like hear the shred on the skate on the
Yes.
ice and just
Yeah. Or like that someone getting checked is like
in the
so loud.
boards.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just the crowd. And I will say Sharks fans are pretty incredible. I
Oh,
can't say
that's
the
cool.
same for Anaheim Ducks fans, which I got exposed to a lot there.
Oh, I do really love the Honda Center though. That's a good venue.
Okay, well the venue can be great, but the fans,
It's weird. Yeah, no, I even went to a concert there and I'm like, who are these people? And it's Orange County.
that's that's the best way to describe them, truthfully. Like the number, like the shit talking that they would do in the parking lot of these games. I can't even tell you some of the dumbest comments that they would be making. It's
Only
anyway.
you are judging a fan base by the shit talk in the parking lot.
Yeah, like earn my respect in your shit talking, god damn it. But one of the stories that came out with Joe Thornton was another player who shared, one day Joe calls me up, says he needs some help moving some furniture or something into an apartment unit. Go to find out that he was paying rent for this homeless woman and her two kids until she could get off her feet. And he's like,
What?
that happened years and years and years ago. No one's ever known, probably until today, till I'm telling this story. And of course, that's what just like made me really. You always knew he was a good guy in hockey, and that story made me appreciate him even more. Made me think again about all the other great gestures that athletes make that we'll never hear about.
Hmm.
But it made me honestly really think about it could so easily be the other way. When a player retires, you hear really shitty things about them,
Yeah,
and it
or
kind of
like
scars their
Gretzky.
legacy. Number one fucking example is Gretzky. Like legacy scarred, and then here you hear this about Joe Thornton. It just like actually elevates him, and it not only made me appreciate so much of the experiences he made for like me and my partner, but also
Hmm.
apparently other people in real life impact.
Oh, and the community of like the Bay Area.
That's it. That's exactly
That's
it.
amazing. The lovely voice that you are hearing is my husband, Dan, who I basically talk about every week on this podcast because he essentially taught me everything I know.
No,
He
really,
will
Dan,
tell
she talks about you every week.
every
I hear,
time.
I'm listening. First of all, I'm a huge fan of you guys. It's really cool that like what you
Oh,
guys are doing, and it's cool that you have an
Oh,
outlet, and it's been really fun to listen to. I think you have really good banter, and it's very entertaining.
aw,
oh.
B.
Already our best guest, Dan.
Okay, so the other reason besides my marriage that we have Daniel on is that Vanita has been very vocal about not knowing anything about the whole college sports scene. I also am like not super familiar with it because I didn't go to a D1 school. So, and Vanita's Canadian. So, V, tell us about that. Like, what is your perception of it?
Like what the fuck is my perception of it? Because no, not even kidding. Our My equivalent of our like university college sports in Canada is poorly funded. you might as well be going to a high school game. You don't get the same big crowds. There's no sponsorship. There's no TV coverage. Like it's just you got your cute little, if you go to that institution, that's going to be your fan base and that's sort of it.
Do they recruit college athletes for like scholarships in Canada?
They do. Yes, they do. But I don't think there's the same amount of money behind it. And it's certainly not funding the institution itself
Mm,
as much as it
mhm.
is for US college sports. So my understanding of it, even growing up, like college sports were on TV, but I think what I didn't really truly understand until I moved to the US was, oh, it's actually not just the people in the stands are not just students at that university. These are people who they're in the college town and that's this town's fucking identity. And you go to the cafe downtown and they have the banner and or it's I'm a mom of a Cal graduate, like they have fucking sweaters and bumper stickers like it all just blew my fucking mind. Honestly,
And the
Dan, like
alums. Yeah.
and the alums, like I just didn't realize how much people rep their educational institution, let alone the team. So for me, the confusion really centers on, are people so aligned with the academic institution, or is it actually just about the sport and has nothing to do with the fucking university?
Yeah, my personal feeling is it's the pride that those people have for the academic institution and them representing that. A little bit about me. I grew up on the Northeast and I never watched college sports before I went to one of these big Division One schools.
Okay.
I think there's certain regions in America where college actually outplays and out like more people watch college than professional sports, specifically the Southeast part of America. But where I grew up, nobody cared about college football. And, we had like the Notre Dame game on every Saturday on NBC, but like we didn't really follow any other team only because it wasn't really accessible as much as it is now. And when I talk about college sports, I think, football is like the number one, right? There's football and then there's everything else. So yeah, not until I went to a Big Ten school and after the first football game, it's ingrained in you that
Wow.
you are going to every single home game. And not only that, it is hard to get tickets to that game because, like you were saying, Vanita, the surrounding community for the last 80 years at Penn State, everybody from, Aunt Karen to Grandma Joe goes to these games. So, there's a strong season ticket holder program, and it's crazy to see a small town in central Pennsylvania that on a non-football Saturday has 25,000 people living in it, plus students. All of a sudden, it has a 110,000 person stadium in the middle of nowhere, and it's packed every single home game for years and years and years. So
Okay.
I
I'm
think it really is rooted in like the academic and school pride that people have for certain colleges
Or
in our country.
town pride, like if you live in State College, like that's
Yeah,
just a
for
thing
town
that
pride,
you're
but I'm
doing.
sure
Yeah.
those if you're living in state college,
You
you
teach at Penn State
you
or you're
teach, you
married
went
to a
there, your
faculty.
kid
Yeah.
went there,
Mhm.
somebody went there. There's no other
Yeah.
reason to be there except for Penn State football.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you said at like these towns like out of nowhere. Like really these towns are way outside of metropolitan areas. And so okay, so tell me this, Dan, do you think that people are drawn to it because we all have something to get together for? There's like a community piece of it, or is it really about the sport? Or does nobody give a fuck really about the sport? It's just like let's just come together and cheer on the same thing.
Yeah, I think it's that. It's definitely the former. It's definitely people just it's a sense of community, it's a sense of pride. I think it's a way for the community to come together. And I think that's hit it right on the head.
I think that there is something so intoxicating about like that kind of like, yeah, team pride and like the herd mentality of like we're all here for something. Cause like my sister went to Cal and her first year, she started getting like all into the football scene. And I like, we are not sporty kids. Like she was an artist. So she just was like, I'm going to all these Cal games. I have all these Cal friends. And like she had all the gear. And I was like, what is happening right now? And then, then she became an architect and didn't have time to go to these games. But even like at UCSD where I went, which was D3, we had a whole school pride association, and our main thing was like women's volleyball. But it was really exciting for like the 20 of us to get together and plan going to one of these games and just rooting for our team because they were our school. So there is something very like addictive and compelling about being in a group like that.
Yeah, and just as a side note, even the lingo that y'all are dropping off so casually, I had to learn like D1, D2, D3, what are the differences? I had to learn all that shit. And people would wear certain ones with with pride, and I'm like, don't know what y'all are talking about. But okay, so Dan, that's interesting that you didn't necessarily grow up with that excitement. It wasn't until you yourself were a college student. So then now fast forward currently, what makes college sports so exciting for you now as a fan? Because you're not a college student on
Hmm.
campus.
I think the biggest thing is as you grow older, when you're watching professional sports when you're younger, these guys are superheroes. They're idols of yours. They're like, they can't do anything wrong, right? Like you look up to them so much. And then you get older and you realize it's just a business, right? This is their profession. This is their job. They're getting paid. And now, salaries are getting crazy. They're making so much money playing these games or sports, but really in the end, it's just a business. When you look back at college sports, it's still about the game and the pride. And like, I find it easier to be yelling at my TV screen to like a 19-year-old kid for missing a field goal than like some guy who like misses a field goal in the NFL and is just like, okay, I'm starting to get $1 million paycheck for this. It's just like the sense of like how important it is for these kids to be playing a sport where 95% of them grew up playing the sport like all the time, and this is their last hurrah. 95% of them
Mm.
are never going to be ever able to play this sport professionally again. That's kind of cool. So that's why I still kind of prefer college football over the NFL because the NFL just seems like a big business to me. But I'm sure we're going to talk about it. But like college is kind of getting that way with these NIL deals and like restructuring in the playoffs now. So hopefully that, college doesn't lose that. But that's what I prefer about college sports.
Like the stakes are higher. It feels
I
like
don't know
there's
if it's
more at stake.
higher because, I think there's more eyeballs on the professional game, but yeah, it just feels like more important to the people playing it.
Hmm,
Mm.
hmm, hmm.
That
That
makes
makes sense.
sense. Also, I would say, so you're right. When we're younger watching the sports, like this feels like it could be like my homie too, and we're like cheering them on. And now I'm like, oh, these kids, like their parents drove them to practice every single day. I have to think about like how much the parents have had to sacrifice and families had to sacrifice. And you just don't want to see anyone lose. You just genuinely want to see good shit happen for these kids who are playing these sports, which I'm with you, Dan. Like, I don't feel that way when I watch the NFL. In fact, a lot of the times I want to see bad shit happen to them on the field because I'm like, fuck you. You know what I mean? Like, especially fuck you, Tom Brady. But I just want to see bad shit. I want to see the divorce happen because fuck you.
Yeah.
I don't want little homie getting a breakup with his girl last night. Now it's impacting his game. Like, come on, dude.
Yeah.
I want to see you do well. So, okay, that being said, you do still watch NFL games though, right, Dan?
Of course, yeah. I think it's just like socially, I kind of have to like that my friend group is just like that's what we talk about. Sports is like everything. So like yes, I do still watch, but I'm just not as passionate as I once was about professional sports.
Well, I mean, how much of that is because of the Giants making you sad? Because
I would
that
say
news just came up.
99% of it is because my sport teams, I am, well, I guess a bandwagon fair weather fan where if they are winning, I am watching every single second. But the second that I know there's no chance and there's like no joy anymore, it's
He's
like I'm
like, we
old
could
enough
change
to,
it.
yeah, I'm old enough to like realize like I don't have to be wasting a beautiful Sunday afternoon watching these professional athletes run around and like play this game anymore.
Well, it's
So
also like it becomes emotional torture, right? At some point, like
for
why would you
sure,
subject
yeah.
yourself to that? Yeah. So that was
100%.
something that came up when Daniel Jones was released this week. I read something because like Dan and I love this kid. We sort of ride or die for him. We really wanted him to succeed and we hope he still does. He seems like such a good guy and a good like force on the Giants, but like there was one article I read that was like the fans have suffered. And I was like, is that the most important thing here? But it probably is because there are probably a lot of fans like you, Dan, who are like, if this team isn't winning, we're not spending as much money on buying jerseys or buying tickets or supporting the team in general. And so those kinds of decisions, I guess, are kind of based on the fans as well, even though it just sounded so, like who's suffering more than Daniel Jones right now? It's not the fans.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, you're always going to have that core group of fans who like ride or die with them. But like, I think, yeah, I think most people fit into my category where if the team isn't good, they're going to start losing interest, start spending less money, not going to as many games, stuff like that.
Okay, Dan, you mentioned this, so I want to jump into it, which is the NIL, so the name, image, likeness issue that's been raised. And I will say, even though I'm not a college sports fan, the whole Reggie Bush 2010 USC Trojans receiving gifts like controversy that absolutely made it um into my headlines and was the first time that I even started to think like what's so fucking wrong? Like you make so much money off of this player and you got some gifts from so that's when it started to get flagged for me. And here we are now 14 years later, and I believe what's transpired now is okay, so players are now allowed to monetize name, image, and likeness. Have you noticed any shifts at all in college sports because of this new change?
Yeah, so I think the other thing that needs to be touched on is
I like that you
also,
said
do you guys know
touchdown, though. I like that you said touchdown. That was good. That was a fucking
well,
spaz.
Nice.
do you guys know what the transfer portal is?
No.
Okay, so the transfer portal is the ability for a student to go from one school to another school after a season. Before, let's just say 2018, it was very, very, very hard to do that. There's paperwork, interviews. You had to have another team who wanted to have you. So it wasn't easy for kids to do that. So it basically never ever happened. You never saw a star player go from one team to the next team because it was so cumbersome to do that process. In 2018, they made it very easy where if a player or a kid wanted to go to another school because he wasn't getting enough playing time, because he wanted to be on a bigger stage, he would put his name into a system. And now every coach in the country could see that kid. That kid is willing to go to another school. Let me now recruit this kid again. So instead of just getting recruited in high school, you're now able to get recruited as you're in another college.
Hmm.
So with that being said, when NIL first became a thing a couple of years ago, now not only can you attract a kid by, hey, saying, you're going to have more playing time, we're going to have you in front of more scouts, and your chances to go to the NFL are higher. Why don't we give you a car deal? Why don't we give you a sneaker deal? My alumni owns the Ferrari dealership down the block. Let's give you a Ferrari for 4 years. So what we're seeing is the top end talent is now jumping from team to team. And the colleges who have the strongest alumni and booster associations are ones who are going to have a leg up because they can offer more. And I'm not talking like the Nike deals and like those are only going to like the cream of the crop people. Like those are the kids like Sanders from Colorado, whose dad is an NFL legend. I think he gets like $5 million a year from Nike to play college football, which is like the top of it, right? Well, I'm just talking about like the local restaurant owners who are giving meals to kids and like there's just an unfair playing advantage, I think, right now when it comes to NIL because you're always going to have those bigger, stronger schools. It's going to stay that way. It's not going to be even playing field. And going back to what we talked before, where does the loyalty lie anymore with like the school that recruited you out of high school, right? So like the pride of being a Penn State and an Lion or a Miami Hurricane player that is no longer there, which I understand because some of these kids have a small amount of time to make money off their NIL. So yeah, it's just an interesting thing that I don't think we know the answer yet because it's so young.
Hmm.
But my worry is that the rich are going to get richer, meaning the best schools are going to get the best players, and the parity gap between, the teams is just going to get greater and greater.
Yeah, it's like like they've created a free agency
Pretty
essentially of
much.
just like
Yeah.
so and this was something that I read that it does kind of dilute what used to be really regional rivalries. So you have like, Texas or and Texas Tech, Georgia Tech or something, right? And now you're seeing schools like UCLA and USC, who used to be part of the Pac-10. They're like, well, we want to be in the Big Ten because we're actually big name money makers, and we don't want to compete just regionally. We want to compete with the big dogs. So I just read something about there was recently a Notre Dame versus Army game, and that's like kind of the perfect example of this because the Army is not federally allowed to take money and they're not allowed to make money off of their likenesses. So NIL doesn't apply to them. So now you have Notre Dame, which is like probably the most famous football program in the country, if not the world. And they're recruiting all of these people with the monies and resources that they have. And the Army is like having to play them. It's
Yeah, but
weird.
those are like that's like one of those matches that's been happening for like a
Yeah.
century, right?
Well,
Like you don't
that's
want to get rid
what's
of that
you
because
don't want to get rid of it because there's a legacy. Like I think it's been going on for over 100 years or something.
crazy.
But
Wow.
now that this discrepancy exists, is that match going to feel the same?
Yeah, that's a good point. And then Venito, like to go back to something you were saying. So now that like Pallavi, you were saying like, the Pac-12 pretty much got disassembled, right? Like all the best teams, they went to the Big Ten because they're like, let's combine powers, right? Like if we could, instead of splitting the money this many ways, let's make it smaller and split the money between all the people who are bringing in the most. So like when it comes to football, like USC football traveling to Penn State, it's not that big of a deal. Like they have tons of money, like the players could do it. But it's not just football that these conferences are getting realigned. It's also the softball teams and the fencing team. And now if like your mom from Southern LA wants to go watch their daughter play college soccer, they have to fly across the country. So it's not
Mm.
regional anymore. So it's going to be interesting to see how that kind of affects like the lower end sports or the less watched sports, I should say.
Mm.
Yeah, it's funny when you mentioned fencing because I was also randomly thinking about fencing. I was like when I think of an example of athletes where the NIL issue probably isn't as prominent. Like let's be honest, it's probably just football and basketball are like such American sports. Like I just think that that makes so much sense. That those are the big ones. But what happens up top there with all that money still trickles down to these less covered, less funded sports, and those athletes have to now pay probably some kind of negative consequence for it, which A really fucking sucks, and B now they still have to find more funding because if fencing team has to travel so far, they don't have the money like football and basketball do. So where the fuck are the expectations there of where this funding is going to happen? And will it then, in some ways, place an expectation that funds that basketball and football end up gathering and collecting? Do those funds then have to be distributed differently in an institution?
Mhm.
Good question. Yeah. I mean, that's like when you see like certain teams like college teams are playing like an inferior opponent and you're like, why is that team playing that team? Usually it's the one good team is paying the smaller school to come and play that football game at their stadium.
Oh,
So like
wow.
an example will be like Alabama football. Like there's like the last 15 years they've been very, very good. Every year they'll have two games on their schedule where they're beating the other team by 70 points, 60 points. And it's like, why would that team agree to do it? It's because Alabama is like, here's a check for $1 million. Come play us at home. You're gonna get your ass kicked. But hey, now you could fund your team traveling for the year and other sports and stuff. And for
So
Whoa.
Alabama, it's like that's a win. That's a one out of my 12 games is an automatic win.
So they rack it up toward their record and can get like toward their playoff berth. Okay.
Yeah.
oh, this is
So
some fucked up class. This is like busing the kids in from the other school district.
mhm.
She's like, we're
Oh
gonna kick your
God.
ass, but like, here's a free lunch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fuck.
And I
What?
think the athletic directors from these smaller schools are like, we need an influx of money to be able to survive. So like this is just the way it is. So
Oh my God.
Yikes.
Okay,
It's
mhm.
so
ugly. There's a lot of reform necessary here, I think, because it's a pretty new advent, the NIL thing, and they need to figure it out.
Yeah, I don't know. I think at this point, like you're allowed to have as many NIL deals as you could get as a
wow.
player. So if somebody's offering you 20 different deals, you're allowed to take them all. I don't know, maybe limiting that. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like you said, it's still so fresh. It's hard to understand. Hopefully, I think it's a good step in the right direction because these kids should be compensated. I think if they
Yeah.
have a platform to make money, there's no reason why they shouldn't. It's just figuring out what's best for the sport itself, and yeah,
Yeah. Because otherwise the kids were getting exploited for the institution that was still raking in the money. So
correct.
this does make the
Hmm.
most sense, but yeah.
But like you said, Pete, it's like pendulum shift, right? It's like,
Yep.
okay, no money at all, no gifts, fuck you, Reggie Bush. But then also do everything that you want, get as much as you can, and at some
Yeah.
point. So Dan, as a fan, what do you want to see happen?
I don't like the transfer portal thing. I hate when kids are shifting teams so much these days. I don't think it's fair. It's an unfair playing field for the like smaller schools, like I was saying. So that I don't like as much. To me, I just want a more competitive product, I would say. I think when you look at the grand scheme of college football, when you go into a year, if you have four, maybe five teams have really the opportunity to win the national championship, that's a lot. Because to be honest, like right now, Penn State is ranked fourth in the country at some like arbitrary like rankings. They're not the fourth best team. They would lose to probably 10 to 15 teams. But the way it's set up is, they bring in a lot of eyeballs, they make a lot of money
Mm.
for the NCAA. They want them in the playoffs. But
Mm,
yeah, I don't know. For me, I would want the competitive advantage to be more even. And I think
okay.
Yeah.
going into a year that, maybe 10 to 15 teams have a chance to win, not just two to three, would be more appealing to me.
So the other thing I happen to know is that there's a lot of bowls that happen.
A lot of bowls. Yeah.
Just bowl after bowl, like your mom's cabinetry at home. And I'm trying to understand, as somebody who maybe like, okay, maybe I like want to kind of get into this and kind of get a feel for college sports, college football. Is there a bowl I should be focusing on?
So the bowl thing has changed. It's ever evolving. It's changing constantly, to be honest. At one point, I think back in college football, and like we're talking like 50, 60 years ago, there weren't bowl games. It was if you were ranked number one at the end of the regular season, you were the national championship. And then people were like, "This is crazy! Like we need to have some kind of like championship game." So then it was like the number one team plays the number two team. Whoever wins that game is the national champion. And then people were like, that's not fair. Like, we should have a bigger playoff. And then it went to four teams where the one team would play the four team and then the two team would play the three team. And then it was like a playoff bracket. This is the first year where we have a 12 team bracket. So people are very excited about that because it's now allowing these lesser teams a
Hmm.
chance to win the national championship. To
Because
me,
otherwise it's like always the same teams, right?
yeah,
At the
well,
end.
so once again, these rankings are arbitrary. There's a committee. It's not based on your record totally. It's like how you win games, how you lose games. So a team who has one loss, like last year, a team with one loss got into the playoffs ahead of a Florida State team who had zero losses. So Florida State was presented a schedule of 13 games. They won all 13 games. They won their conference, which is the ACC conference, and they didn't get a bid into the playoffs because the committee didn't think they were good enough. Instead, they took an Alabama team who already lost and gave them their spot. So is
Oh
that
my
fair?
God,
No.
it's
Right?
so fucking
So
confusing. Yeah,
then
okay.
this year it was like, okay, we'll go to 12 teams. But to me, the argument's gonna be the same. Like that argument between the fourth team and the fifth team is now gonna be between the 12th team and the 13th
Yeah.
team.
Where's the
So
Right.
cutoff? Yeah.
this is just gonna keep growing because
Yeah.
the more games, the more money, the more TV deals.
It's
So
pretty
bowl
big though,
games
right?
used to be tied to certain conferences. So like the Rose Bowl, for example, it's a very big thing in Southern California. It's affiliated with the city of Pasadena. There's parades. There's a princess court that I think Pallavi went out for when she was younger,
Ooh.
where she could be the
I
queen of
failed.
the Rose Bowl
I'm not queen of
parade.
shit.
You're the queen in my heart, P.
So that game was always tied to a Pac-12 team or Pac-10 team, so a Western Conference team who had roots in Southern California, and a Big Ten team. So if
Okay.
you won the Pac-10, if you won the Big Ten, you played in the Rose Bowl. That
Okay.
was your.
Oh,
And
okay.
now it's just like, okay, we've played our Big Ten schedule. You've played your Pac-12 schedule. Let's see who the best of these two conferences are.
Which is fun. That's
Which
cool.
is fun, right? Because those teams would never play. A Penn State would never play a USC because they
Right.
were in
Uh-huh.
different conferences.
So
Now
that's the
that all these
bowl.
conferences are shrinking, there's less and less conference rivalries as there once was. Everybody's just playing each other. All the best teams are playing each other during the regular season. So now we're losing that aspect of the bowl games.
Mm.
Mm.
Okay, but you'd still say Rose Bowl is like,
That's ours. That's our bowl. And it's on New Year's Day. So, every time there's like a holiday game, it's sort of like a big deal.
I think the
yeah,
pageantry of the Rose Bowl can't be topped, right? It's like it's an all day thing with a parade, and it's like very collegiate because you have like marching bands and like the
mm,
twirlers and cheerleaders, so it's
Yeah,
like
they come
it's
from
just
all over the country, those bands.
all
Yeah.
over the world. Wasn't there like a
Oh,
Japanese
yeah, there
cheerleading
was.
team or yeah,
Yeah.
so it's like a
Yeah.
big honor to be
mm.
invited to that
I'm a
parade.
sucker
So
for
I
a
would say
good
that
drum
would be the
line.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And she like you're hungover on New Year's Day. What the fuck else are you gonna do? Like, might as well just cheer these kids on. Okay, I have two more questions for you, Dan, and then I promise you can go. But one is, you and I have both really watched P grow up over the years. First no bangs, now there's bangs, and you're like, wow, what's happening here? So I'm curious, Dan, what is it like to have been in the relationship as long as you have with P and to see her get more into sports, probably now at the peak more than ever, when that's not even how your relationship started? What's that been like for you to sort of like observe? I
Um, so I'll preface it by saying I love it. It's great. It's great that, to have
feel like there's a butt
common
coming,
There
P.
is a butt coming.
to have common, hobbies with your wife or your significant other or your partner. So I think that's great. And I think I'm super impressed with the amount of information she retains and the sponge that she is when it comes to sports is like super impressive. Yeah, so I think it's been really cool to see her grow and then kind of get more interested in like I guess what you guys are talking about, like the outside instead of just the game, let's like look a little deeper into the sport itself and like the people. I know she loves like the sport documentaries are her favorite. It doesn't matter what sport. She loves to learn about the person behind the mask or whatever. Um, so that's really cool. Do I still have days where I want to go lock myself in the garage and watch a sport game? Yes.
Yeah.
Only because sometimes, those questions that are about the rules could be a little annoying when you're trying to
Yeah.
focus on the game.
I'm
So that would be,
also, I also do what you and I do, V, which is like I'll shit on how some of the bullshit right? Like we're talking about how there's bullshit in the college sports world, and I'll be like, this is not cool, or like that guy got hit in the head too hard. So like my issues are not, I think, things that like a long-term fan is necessarily thinking about or
Right.
caring about when they're trying to enjoy their sport. So like I could see how that would be grating. And the garage is a good happy medium place for that.
I think, yeah, Pallavi gets very optimistic when we're watching my teams or the teams I root for, and I don't want that sometimes. If they're like,
Yeah.
perfect example, Vanita, 2 days ago or 3 days ago when the New York Rangers were playing the Edmonton Oilers, I turned that game on in the first period, and within 2 or 3 minutes, I told Paul it was 0-0. I was like,
Yeah.
Pallavi, this game
He
is
was like, turn
over.
it off. Yeah.
Turn it off. I was like, if this period ends 1-0, it'll be good for us, like losing 1-0. And she's like, no, it's 0-0. What are you talking about? But I have the eyes and the
You knew.
foresight to know how
Mm.
my team is playing and how the other team is playing. And I knew that game we had zero chance of winning. Whereas when it was 2-0 at the end of the first period, that game was off our TV because I did not want to ruin my night watching that anymore.
Yeah.
But Paul is
Whereas
very positive, and I think that's
but
something
I
that's
also,
really
I'm
nice.
like looking at like what's happening on our Jersey Mike's thing, and I'm like, any result that we expect is usually not what we get. So I kind of feel like anything could happen at any time. But yeah,
Too
I get
optimistic. She's too optimistic.
it.
It's true. You don't want someone to be cheerleading sometimes. They're just like, yo, they're playing like shit. Just trust me, they're playing like shit. Yeah, one of the best statements Berto ever said to me when I was drinking was like, babe, like you're thinking too much.
Yeah.
And like really, I think that's part of what can ruin the experience. Um,
But that is the experience for me. Like, I want to be doing that thinking. And so, yeah, it's okay to separate that out and have our own relationships with it.
yes. Okay, so Dan, I actually really honestly appreciate you waxing poetic on this because for me, I'm always trying to figure out it's like double dutch. I'm like, where's my entry point? Like, how the fuck do I get into this? I want to understand what it's all about. So New Year's Day, I know what my plans are, first of all. I know who I'm gonna probably be texting. You guys. But we always ask our guests one last question. And P, you know what? It's always you who asked the last question, so I'm gonna pass it over to you to ask Dan this one.
Okay. What does your sports fandom look like, and what do you not miss if it's on?
So right now it changes. You know, growing up, it was all about Yankee baseball. That was my thing. I loved the Yankees, and going back to what we were talking about before, they were very, very good, right? So like in 1996, when they started this journey of winning 4 out of 5 years, I was 11 years old. So like being an 11-year-old boy growing up, you're playing every sport, you're watching every sport. So like baseball was number one. As time has gone on, baseball's kind of boring. I don't really love it anymore. You know, I'll still watch it, but like I think hockey is like kind of my number one. And I never played hockey growing up, but like
Oh, good answer,
I
Dan.
think it's just like the most entertaining game. And like once like March or April comes around, I'm watching every single game because it's so entertaining. Now I'm just kind of hyper focused on the New York Rangers, but yeah, I think that's kind of like my big thing right now, sport wise. Yeah, what's part two of the question? I forgot.
What do you not miss when it's on?
Sounds like
What do I
Rangers
Sport.
games.
not miss?
Yeah, Ranger games. Yeah.
What do
Unless
I
they're doing
not
bad.
miss? Um,
Like a golf grand slam. Is that what they're called? The big
Golf
golf
Like
major
majors,
championships.
majors.
majors. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, those.
Yeah, I think
It
that's
was a
probably
grand,
my
I mean, a
answer.
grand slam is if you get all of them, so that is an
Yeah.
actual
Okay,
term.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Do
Yeah, I
you
think that's
still
right.
keep up with majors? You do, Dan?
Yeah, I kind of go through phases with golf too. Like there was times where I would watch every tournament. Now
Yeah.
it's more just the big stuff. I think, nice to have a little break in the winter time now from golf. But I remember listening to one of the podcasts and Vanita, it's like Tiger Woods, he's the dude, right? Like when he was on, like that's what brought you to the sport. That's what brought me to the sport. Like he's
Mm.
the GOAT. Like he was so fun to watch. He would wax everybody in the field. It was great. And now he's like not there, right? So it's like, okay, do I care
Mhm.
about Sahith Theegala that much, or like,
I do.
sure, I get
Yeah,
it,
but yeah,
but
I get it. But it's like
you know,
also like when you were a Yankee fan, it was like the Jeter years, and so that you probably can't
yeah.
replicate that feeling, right?
Yeah, I think with golf it's just they have a lack of like interesting people at the top right now. It's just not that
Yes.
interesting to me. Um
Yeah.
that's what I struggle with, but I'll still watch every major for sure.
That's fair. That's more than what I'm watching these days, honestly, when it comes to golf. So I'm still
I
waiting. I'm
know
waiting for my interest to go up in that
you're
sport.
having like an existential crisis though, I think, with golf. Yeah.
I am, which means I'm just missing Tiger Woods. That's what my crisis.
Yeah. Well,
I
and it's
just don't
because
like
of
how
like,
everybody's like buddy buddy, right? Like,
Yes.
like everybody hated Tiger, right? Like or hated Phil because they were the best.
yeah.
Which you can appreciate. Now it's like these guys are like on the Instagram stories, like on yachts, hanging out, popping bottles. Like it's just like, okay. It
It's
goes back to that like professional sport thing where people are getting paid way too much money and it's like a business and a job for them. You
Right.
lose a little bit of that competitiveness that you tune in for. That's why you're
Yeah.
watching.
It's also not as fun when the same people keep winning it. And like Scotty Scheffler keeps taking all the titles. Like I went through the same thing with tennis when it was like always Federer and Serena. And I'm like, I like these two people, but I kind of like, why am I watching this?
Yeah, but
And
like if
similar,
if Scheffler was like a bad boy, right? Like and like
yeah,
said
yeah,
like fuck you guys, I'm the best,
yeah,
like that would be cool. But he's like so vanilla and like he's just
yeah.
like not that interesting.
Yeah, if he was like OG Ricky Fowler, but still winning everything, that could be
If he had
fun.
any kind of swag towards him, like I think he would be more likable, but
Dan, thanks for joining P and
no
I. Honestly, we've
problem.
been waiting for this episode. I've been waiting for this episode for weeks, to be honest, even if you didn't know that you were going to be on. Just
I found out yesterday. I will say I don't think college football is my like biggest area of expertise, but happy to
Oh,
help
well,
and
we're gonna have you back then for your other ones for sure, and certainly for hockey playoff time.
that'll be
Uh,
fun.
oh, yes.
yeah, you are wonderful. Thank you so much.
No problem, guys. Like, once again, super proud of both of you. This has been so fun to listen to.
Oh,
Keep it up.
Oh, thanks,
thanks,
Maggie.
Dan. It's
No
so
problem. No
nice.
problem.
Sweet little
He's
thing.
he was so
He
great.
was wonderful. That was dope. That was
Yeah,
everything I
I
needed.
just I know this isn't his thing, but like being put on the spot and being in the limelight, but I just wanted you and our listeners to like hear how he talks about stuff because honestly, that's how I got here. He
Yeah.
like knows things, but he explains them in very understandable ways, and it makes me really interested. And yes, it leads to more questions, which he's probably like, "Oh God, backfire." But it is, yeah, I really love hearing him talk about different sports.
Listen, anyone who can get me interested and excited about a transfer portal is like doing a fucking excellent job.
Yeah,
And I find
yeah,
that fascinating now, truthfully. Like, the thing for me that I'd always been missing about college sports is someone like that to just break it down, but in a way that feels quite balanced. Like, you're right. This is a fucked up part of it. And here's what you still want. You still want to be cheering these kids on because they've dedicated. So, like, I
yeah,
love that part of accessibility to sports, which is tell me the pros and cons here. Allow me to then make the choice as a possible fan on how I want to get engaged with the sport. It's also very validating, and it's been a theme with our episodes of how fandom shifts throughout the years, how we grow, our values grow, our priorities change, and then also your fandom can do that too.
mm-hmm.
And it just honestly is so it gives me permission in that way. It also gives me permission to check out a Rose Bowl or some college sports and be like, it's actually not for me.
Yeah. Like when we were watching the F1 race, I like really wanted to stay up for it. And I would say halfway through, Dan's like, yeah, I'm sort of done with this. He was like doing other stuff on his phone. And meanwhile, I was like engrossed. I don't know what that is because it seems like there's maybe a women men thing with the F1 that we don't really understand yet. But yeah, like it's okay to like go with your interests and let it speak to you, even if it stops speaking to you. Like it's not a big deal.
Yes, yes. And to change your mind. And I guess my one ask always is that I'm gonna hopefully role model this with college sports is just like give one game, give something a try.
Yeah.
And for me to engineer the right conditions around it, which is to have like good people around me. If I'm gonna go to a game
Yeah.
for the first time, I want to bring someone who's dope in live experiences in general.
Yeah.
You know what I
I
mean?
like looking into like the story, like the histories of how these teams or players got there, who I'm supposed to be watching, because especially for team sports, it kind of just looks like a
All
field
the
of
same.
people.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, or even just, with Dan talking about college sports and this idea of the transfer portal, and I just that phrase now is
It's
so
so funny.
um
It's so
I'm
college,
it's
the
so
transfer
college. It reminds me
portal.
like, oh fuck, did I miss the deadline to register
Yeah.
for class?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, exactly.
and now I'm gonna be interested to think about, yeah, like have these players played somewhere else? What was the choice behind this? But also to think about what kinds of opportunities exist out there for a college student to monetize name, image, likeness. Like, who are
Hmm.
the people putting money towards this? Who are the people purchasing? The entire economics behind it is also what I find quite fascinating.
Well, V, what are you currently obsessed with?
Okay, different flavor this week. And I have to say, not only does this stem from me just like regularly reading research every week, because
Yeah,
I just
data
regularly
queen.
do that, but it also made me want to hang out with you more.
Oh, me.
And I'll tell you why. This research study, so it just got published in November. The headline basically is Your Friends Shape Your Microbiome. A shared meal, a kiss
Right.
on the cheek.
Well, that, yeah, but like, how do we shape each other's microbiomes over Zoom?
This is what I'm trying to figure out, and I want to contact the
Do we need to like
researchers.
send each other like our like fecal transplant?
Just gonna
We went there.
lick a
We
whole
went there.
page.
Yeah.
I need you to lick it back. Uh, okay, so these researchers analyzed nearly 2,000 people who live in remote villages in Honduras. And what they try to basically reveal is who's spreading gut microorganisms to whom. And in probably no surprise, but still very cool to hear, the more people interact, the more similar the makeup is of their gut microorganisms.
Mm.
And this is, even if they don't live in the same household, they have a social connection and they're hanging out.
Well, because a lot of the microbiome also lives on your skin, right? So like touch is probably a big part of it.
Yes. Yep. You got it. And so often when we hear about microbiomes and like Gwyneth Paltrow's company sells you dumb shit about adjusting your microbiome, we think about diet, what we're putting into our body. And what I love about this study is, now there's a lot of focus on social health in addition to mental health. This is a piece of it, which is, no, really, we're finding out that the people you spend the most time with, they are shaping your guts. A lot of the earlier research in this realm has been like, how are health conditions shaped by who you're hanging out with, right?
Uh-huh.
If I'm married to somebody who is obese, I'm more likely to be obese. And
Mm-hmm.
so much we talk about diet and environmental factors, but rarely have we talked about that social acts, our actual interaction playing a role in what makes up in our body. And
Hmm.
yeah, so now I like need to really judge who I'm hanging out with.
I know.
This is groundbreaking stuff because often in
Mm-hmm.
health we're always talking about diet and
Mm-hmm.
physical exercise, but now, hey, the more people you're interacting with, the more likely you are to also have the same gut microorganisms.
Or at least diversity, you know. Yeah.
This is it.
That's
So that's why I mean it kind of made me like miss you because I was like, oh, I want to share some gut microorganisms with P.
oh my God, I would love nothing more.
Yeah, like I'm sure those tacos we shared last time we saw
Yeah.
each other had a big impact on my microbiome. And you're like one of those people that I'm like, I like her microbiome vibe. Like I could use
I mean, I've had a very
more of that.
complicated gut, but I'm in a good place.
So different for my obsessions this week. I mean, I'm still listening to Mariah Carey in the background, FYI. But
It's fully
that's
Mariah season.
that's me, P. What are you obsessed with this week?
Well, on the theme of loving who you're married to.
Oh, I thought you were gonna be like, there's a segue from microbiome to something else.
Okay, yes. Being in love with who you're married to. My obsession is the marriage dynamic between Simone Biles and Jonathan Owens. I just
Yes.
cannot. Like, we were watching this season of Hard Knocks, which followed the Bears, and there was this whole episode where he like took off part of training camp to go to Paris to cheer her on. And then he came back and all of the guys were like, "Oh, we were watching it, so cool." And the way that he was like gushing about her and saying stuff like, "Oh man, she's just I don't know how she does what she does. She does incredible things." Like this NFL athlete who's very valuable in his own right is like feeling about Simone Biles the way the rest of the world feels about Simone Biles and like what she accomplishes athletically. And from an insider point of view in both ways, like for him to say that just similarly, Shohei Ohtani's wife is this Japanese basketball star
Right. Right.
who's also tall. They're both like huge and athletic and strong. And I kind of love these like male athletes choosing counterparts who can share that side in it with them versus kind of choosing these polar opposites. And so it's so clear that they share Jonathan and Simone share this love and appreciation for what the other does. Simone often goes to his games and wears all the gear. And then I don't know if you saw this week's Chicago Bears game when Jonathan Owens like prevented a sack or something. He made a really good block. He comes out and he does her
Yes!
little uh
Her pose at the
her
end.
pose at the it's just so cute.
I fucking love that you brought up this Biles Owens relationship because I'll be honest, I'm more invested in it than Kelsey and Taylor Swift.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Yes.
Like cool, you have like two women who are top of their game, top of what they do, who are seemingly doing it so gracefully and with such kindness. Okay, great. However, they're not like, I don't know if maybe they do pan to Simone Biles in the crowd, but I feel like they're not doing as much as they do with Taylor Swift, which,
Yeah.
let's call it out, white couple, blonde
Yeah.
woman, all that shit plays a role.
Yeah.
But I watched the Simone Biles documentary, and they do show the perspective of what it was like for Jonathan Owens to be in Paris supporting her at the Olympics. And what I love so much about that is, listen, this man he's an alpha in all these spaces, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're an NFL fucking football player. You are, masculinity defined, locker room talk, the whole thing. But goddamn, does he know his place and how he's supposed to support his wife in these situations? And
Mm-hmm.
it's clear that she gets very anxious right before the competition. And there's a scene where she asks him to bring one of the bags from upstairs from their hotel because she forgot whatever, one of her outfits. And he wasn't sure which one, so he brings down two.
Oh.
And she's like, I told you, it's the one that whatever, like you didn't have to bring down.
Oh
And
my
she's
God,
like,
it's such husband-wife
such
stuff.
a husband-wife interaction. And listen, he could fucking defend himself. He
Mm-hmm.
could dig his heels in and get into it with her. But he fucking knows this is how she shows up on competition day because she is doing
Mm-hmm.
something spectacular that 0.1% of the population will ever know what it's like to be in that mindset. And so
Mm-hmm.
you just see him kind of let it slide off his back, and he's like, "Here you go, babe," and
Oh
just
my
and just knows
God.
truly how to support her. My appreciation for Jonathan Owens grew so much watching that documentary. So then when I see him now over the weekend do this play where he ends with the Simone Biles pose, I was like, "Fucking, that's what's up, dude.
They
That's
like
how you
it's
show
they
up for each
love each
other."
other, they support each other, it's mutual, and his like their focuses are shared. Like he could easily have like a singular focus. Perhaps he is the one, I don't know about Simone Biles like income in terms of endorsements, but perhaps he is the one with like the more lucrative contract, right? Even if that were true, it would be so easy for someone in that role to be like, well, football's my focus and I can't spend time like learning about this shit because this is the deal for me. And he's just so not that. It's so shared, and they are really truly on the same level in so many ways, but with also the appreciation, like he understands his wife is the goat,
Yes. Yes.
which is like something that could be so threatening to especially a fellow athlete.
I think most men are
Yeah.
threatened by that, P. Like you and I you just shared it. Like there's Shohei Ohtani. It's a rarity to see a top performer male athlete also be coupled with or partnered with a top performing female in whatever domain that is. It doesn't have to
Yep.
be sport.
Right.
Usually they're in the background. I just think truly it's a bigger challenge to masculinity, a bigger challenge to self-work to be with partnered with the person who is also actually a career climber themselves.
Yeah, exactly. He chose a partner who he wanted to share with and to be challenged by, and that shows a lot of strength.